Welcome back to the shop, guys. We got a new toy here today. This is a moped engine-based go-kart from our friends over in China. Anyway, this features a Honda Helix liquid-cooled engine. It obviously is not a Honda engine, but it is a Honda-designed engine. Got it pretty cheap off of a coworker. Plan of action right now is just to get the thing running. I have another go-kart that is a Carter Brothers that I've had since I was about 12. This is a very similar design in cage and everything. There's a couple key distinctions to it. It's a lot larger because it's double the displacement, double the fun. It was also a lot slower than my 150 when I got it. What we'll be focusing on today is something that's probably been equally hit with videos on the internet, but you know what? It's what I'm good at, so we're gonna do this. And I wouldn't even say I'm good at it. I got these Chinesium $18 Amazon LEDs. Removed the broken rear view mirrors that were on here, and we're gonna mount these guys here, because these, if I remember correctly, are actually like 15 watt turn signal bulbs. They are very, very dim. So we're gonna get these guys set up on here, give it a little bit more of a bug eye look too. So we're going to wire it up with a 5-pin Bosch, or should I say Bosch style relay, and run all that wiring back to the battery. So anyway, let's get at her. All right, guys, that's what it looks like with them all mounted up. It's pretty damn good to me. What are you guys doing? Willow, come here. Sit, baby. Sit. Good girl. The monkey head. Hi, Tilly. Anyway, I guess we'll get to wiring them. By the way, beer of the day, Busch Light. 2 little beers out of 4. Maybe I've had too many. 2 little beers out of 5. Because it's good enough for her. Good enough. Get her done. What we're going to use for wire is this lovely Amazonian 16 gauge primary wire. Use a little bit of red action and a little bit of black action. Bringing a ground up to the front, even though I could ground through the frame. I just have a feeling that the grounds, since the battery sits on the swing arm, isn't going to be the greatest. You don't ever want to ground through any sort of bearing or any sort of bushing. And that's exactly what we have here. So we're going to run a ground all the way forward, even though I think there might be one up there already. Whenever you're working on a vehicle that has a battery in it, you're always going to want to go ahead and disconnect your ground on that battery, if not both terminals. Typically the ground will do. You just don't want to cause any arcing across the terminals potentially while you're working on stuff, especially when you're wiring. So we'll go ahead and disconnect this guy. I'm going to go ahead and actually disconnect both sides just because you're always going to want to disconnect the ground first, because whenever you go to disconnect the positive side, you don't want to be able to accidentally close this circuit by, say, touching this shock or shorting out to the frame. So go ahead and take your ground off first, and that'll eliminate that hazard. Break. Ah, that's bright. Get in there, yum. Here's a quick trick for any of you guys who want a professional looking wiring job. You set your spool on one end of where you are going to be wiring from. You rough it out, running through whatever passageways or nooks and crannies you got to go through that you can't get to after the wire has been terminated on either end, meaning you can't slide it up in there. And then you go and you pull out a decent amount of wire, and you bring that wire up to wherever you're running to. So in my case here, I'm running into this gauge cluster. This is how you get wiring that looks like it was done by a professional. Like, you know, your neighbor with that, 68 Chevelle SS, everything is immaculate. Well, this is what he did, or the guy who built this car, because we all know that Bob didn't fucking do that. So in this case, we're gonna go down along that harness, up this thing here to the light, and then there's actually a little clippy thing right there, and we'll come back and we'll run up this A-pillar and up to the gauge cluster. And then you take your wire and you hold it with one hand and then trace whatever you're going along, sliding your hand down as you go. And then later, what you're going to want to do is come back and either zip tie it or secure it in whatever way you're going to do. Either, get some of this donkey dick tubing like this thing has. I don't know what that a sort of split loom, excuse me, not a donkey dick. And you run it along that and secure it however you're going to secure it. Zip ties, tape, however you like. And when I say tape, I don't mean frickin' Scotch tape or anything, or duct tape for that matter. I mean nice fabric loom tape. It's very cheap. You can get it on Amazon. And you just run it along there until you get back to wherever you are. So you'll have the perfect length of wire without wasting a ton extra. I mean, you're going to pull some off the loom or off the roll that you wouldn't normally have to pull off. It's going to give you a much more professional looking result than if you tried to pull it all the way back and then you cut it too short and you got a whole, stretched here and it looks like a banjo string. And next thing you know, you got little kid from Deliverance, Joe Biden, plucking on that bad boy. Okay, guys, I took the liberty off screen to go ahead and wrap up my wire in this weird split loom, stretchy loom stuff that I got with another project that I was working on. Next, I'm going to be taking some small zip ties and zip tying everything into place all along the whole route of the wire. I ran it all the way back. And I'm not going to terminate anything until I get to the battery. That way you can pull out any slack that you have and you can put in any service loops. And if you don't know what a service loop is, it is just a small loop of wire that allows you to have some slack to repair an end if you have an issue with one of the terminations. Okay, guys, now that we have our wire all run back, our next step is going to be using a test light to figure out which side of this switch has the power on it all the time. And we're going to put our relay solenoid, which is denoted by this white wire here, that is terminal 86. That's going to be on the switched side of this switch. So that will pull this relay in whenever we hit the light button on the things to turn the lights on the go-kart. That way it's behind the main relay that comes on when you turn the key and you don't have any issues with accidentally leaving lights on and draining your battery down. So we will quickly hook up our battery. We'll turn our switch for the mains, and we obviously don't have power because the fan didn't kick on and that thing is on cruise control. There we go. Good sounds, good sounds. All right, we'll go ahead and pop this guy out. And now we got two wires. We got a black and a brown coming out of here. Go ahead and see what side. So this is I do want to mention, this isn't a typical test light. It's a little different. It's got this two color LED in here, and this does logic tests. So say something goes low, it'll show a red light. That means it's going to ground. Say something goes high, it'll show a green light, meaning if it's on mains power. The difference here is you have to hook it up to positive and negative on there so it has a reference to know what you're testing on. In this case, you can use it as a standard test light. Just hook whatever side you want. I'm hooking red to ground. and that will tell us if we have power, which we do, on the black wire. Okay, so we can shut that off. We know we're going to have to tap this brown wire. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the battery again because, remember, always unsafe to work on stuff that has the battery hooked up. Go ahead and close this thing up and crimp it with a piece of pliers. And I'll fill this with dielectric grease later so that it doesn't corrode, because that's the biggest issue with these things is you'll get water in and it'll corrode the wire like halfway through in the middle of the run, which is a big issue if you're doing it, say, on a car, and this is the turn signal, or actually probably your marker light would be tapping if you're installing, say, lights on a car. I'll fill it with dielectric grease so it doesn't get that green death. All right, boys. Takes a lot to get this out of me, but like the tree said to the lumberjack, I'm stumped. I don't have relay control right now. And the strange thing is when I ground out the one side of the solenoid, I have it turn on. Doesn't matter which wire it goes to on here. Might be backfeeding power from somewhere. I'm not sure. But the key does control the power. It does shut the lights off. So I don't know. Maybe we'll pick this up tomorrow and see if I got it figured out. Have us think about it. All right, guys, back out in the shop today. Took a little time last night to do some research on these guys. I come to find that these Chinese buggies actually run AC while they're actually running. The battery and the starter is the only DC components on this thing, which I find kind of odd considering this fan kicks on whenever I start the thing up. Anyway, taking that information, I went ahead and added a isolated switch that we're going to use for our pod lights. And I'm in the process of removing my relay because I'm no longer going to use that. And I'm going to wire in this inline fuse so we don't melt anything if something were to fail in these El Cheapo pods. Anyway, I'm going to get to wiring this in and I'll show you guys what I'm up to after that. I got this inline fuse all wired in. I got to do some cable management here, obviously, but it's looking good back here. So basically, after what I read, I was deciding that my best course of action, so that this didn't become, or so that I didn't fry the LED pods with the AC, which I know isn't necessarily an issue. I mean, because as a light emitting diode, it only allows current from one direction anyhow. But I didn't want to run the chance of them having not being robust enough and burning up whatever might be inside of them. So I ran parallel connections straight from the 12-volt battery. So I'm guaranteed DC current out of this and out to these lights because it's completely isolated other than the battery from the rest of the buggy, in theory. So that being said, we're going to see how this goes, and hopefully we don't burn up anything. Like I said, we all learn something new every day, even though most of us might not know it. Anyhow, I'm going to dial up the rest of this, and let's get out and rip this thing around a little bit. There seems to be a problem here. Had a little panic attack. Got light. I only have one side of lights because turns out we had a crib death on one of the other ones. So we're going to have to order up another one. At this point, I can't really return it. I think maybe I'll do a video pulling it apart and seeing what's wrong inside of it. Maybe we can fix it, use it for something else. What do you think, Willow? It's bullshit, right? That's what I thought. Tilly, what are you doing? You don't even know. So the new driving lights came in to replace the one that was dead on arrival. And I went bigger this time because you know what? Go big or go home. We got this guy. It's just, you know, a double. Same brand. I don't learn to eat that quickly. But we're going to give them a chance to see if they can redeem themselves. We'll get this guy wired in right quick and we'll see how this thing goes. All right. I got them wired up. What do you think, Tilly? I ended up putting the two new lights, because obviously they come as a pair. Like I said, I wasn't going to return that other one. I put those two on the driver's side, kind of angled them as ditch lights. So you got one kind of pointing off into the, and straightforward then, since these are floods, not a normal spot beam, driving beam, like this guy over here. I did end up buying two more. It was kind of a mix-up. I might send those back. We'll see. Or if I get that other spot beam going, I'll put both spots up here on the top, and then I'll put the two, I guess, flood beams down below. I haven't drilled a hole or anything for this one yet. But yeah, she is done for now. I have to tap in this lower light yet. I do have it on a battery at the moment, but that can wait for another day. For the good enough for the women I go out with. What are you eating? Hey, let's turn the lights off here. Oh, I'm gonna kill the lights out back here. Good enough for now. That's quite a bit of light output, I think, for these little teeny tiny pods. They don't draw much at all from the buggy. Of course, it's going to make a liar out of me. And because, you son of a bitch. And because I wired them directly to the battery's acting now. The battery isn't a capacitor, but it's acting as at least a power bank, so they don't flicker. So they don't flicker at low RPM. Had I wired him in alongside the stock lights, which by comparison here, we'll turn those on, we'll see if you guys can even notice. The stock lights are, yeah, that's with the stock lights on. Can't see shit. But they're pitiful. I'm going to turn these guys off, at least one of them. There, stock lights. Fucking horrific. Anyway, before I kill my battery. Yeah, she's done. Next thing to do is take her out at night and do some ripping. And hopefully I'll throw a little bit of that at the end. I guess until next time, Willow, fuck off. Come here, Tilly. Come here.